Alright, Section 3, Chapter 1. Soundness and necessary truth. Closely connected with the concept of a sound argument is that of a necessary truth. A sentence, and from this point onward, let us use sentence as short for declarative sentence in written form, is a necessary truth if and only if there are no conceivable circumstances of which it would be false. The sentence, Socrates died in 399 BC, or Socrates did not die in 399 BC, is a necessary truth, for it is true independently of the facts about Socrates or about anything else. So this is kind of important for my understanding of logic, that we're really narrowing down to logic working on declarative sentences in written form. Okay, that's pretty specific subset of language and a wide variety of statements that cannot be analyzed with formal logic. Okay, anyway, continuing. By contrast, the sentence Socrates died in 399 BC, while true, is not necessary. There are easily describable circumstances of which it would have been false. We shall return in a moment to the notion of a necessarily true sentence, but first let us examine the connection between necessary truth and soundness. To state this relationship compactly, a bit of special terminology is helpful. A sentence of the form, if blank, then blank, where the blanks are to be filled in with other sentences, is called a conditional. The sentence that immediately follows the word if is called the antecedent, and what follows the word then is called the consequent. Now, given an argument with finitely many premises, we construct a so-called corresponding conditional by taking as antecedent the sentences that result from conjoining all the premises by means of the word and as a consequent, the conclusion. Then, the connection between the soundness and necessary truth is just this. An argument with finitely many premises is sound if and only if the corresponding conditional is necessarily true. For example, the first argument given in Section 1 is sound if and only if the conditional, if all men are mortal and all Greek are men, then all Greeks are mortal, is a necessary truth, which it is. Instead of referring to the connection between soundness and necessity, we should have said a connection, for another interesting relationship is the following. A sentence is a necessary truth if and only if there is no unsound argument of which it is the conclusion. In other words, a necessarily true sentence is a consequence of every set of premises, and any such sentence is a necessary truth. For suppose that a sentence S is necessarily true, and consider an argument having S as a conclusion. Now the argument is sound if and only if it is not possible that its premises be true and its conclusion, which is S, false. But since S is necessarily true, it is not possible that S be false, and thus it is obviously not possible that simultaneously the premises be true and S false. If it is not possible for the cow to jump over the moon, then it is not possible for the cow to jump over the moon while the little dog laughs to see such sport. Therefore, the argument is sound. On the other hand, if S is a consequence of every set of premises, it is a consequence of any set of premises consisting exclusively of necessary truths. Thus, it will be true under all circumstances that make these sentences true, i.e., under all circumstances. Therefore, S is a necessary truth. So, S is necessarily true if and only if it is consequence of every set of premises. Confusing, huh? Example. The necessary conditional mentioned on page 7 is a consequence of grass is green. So that was the on page 7 was Socrates died and all men are mortal. Okay, so grass is green. Seems to have no relationship. This is a weird thing about logic, the way it deals with relationship. But anyway, so it's a consequence of grass is green, which is taken as a truism. For of course there are no conceivable circumstances which this sentence would be true and the conditional false, since there are no circumstances which the conditional would be false. Since mathematical truths are considered to be the very paradigms of necessary truths, the considerations just raised lead us to realize that there is no such thing as an unsound argument having a mathematical truth as its conclusion. This shows that the concepts of sound argument and proof cannot very well be identified with one another. To find a proof for a mathematical sentence involves a great deal more than merely producing a sound argument that has only mathematical truths as premises and the given sentence as a conclusion. The above characterization of necessary truths is most often associated with the philosopher G.W. Leibniz, although it is by no means original with him. According to the doctrine of Leibniz, the actual world in which we find ourselves is only one of infinitely many possible worlds that could have existed. It is, indeed, the best of all possible worlds, for a reason not relevant here, and that is why God chose to bring it into existence. So, yeah, Mates was an atheist, but anyway, yeah, he has a subtle sense of humor. But, like this book being read like this, he was a liberal, but he was no Maoist. But I always felt it's like this was he's like, I'll make a little red book with actual stuff in it. Okay. Now, the distinction between the actual world and the various other possible worlds leads to a related distinction among sentences. To say that a sentence is true is to say that it is true of the actual world. Some true sentences, however, are not true only of the actual world, but also of all other possible worlds as well. These are the necessary truths, sometimes called also truths of reason or eternal truths. Sentences that are true of the actual world but not of all possible worlds are called contingent truths, or truths of fact. Scientific laws are supposed to be of the latter kind, for although they describe the world, the actual world, in considerable generality, there are numerous possible worlds of which they do not hold. The truths of mathematics and logic, on the other hand, are said to be true of all possible worlds, including, of course, the actual world. Thus, for example, there is no possible world of which the sentence Socrates died in 399 BC or Socrates did not die in 399 BC would be false. In considering whether this is so, it is well to remember that the question is, given the sense of this sentence, is there a possible world of which it would, in that sense, be false? The circumstance that it would be false, if, e.g., the word or meant what and means, is irrelevant. Now, Leibniz sometimes explains possibility and necessity in terms of conceivability. A sentence is a necessary truth if the opposite of what it asserts is conceivable. If the opposite. But he wishes to use the latter word in what may be termed as a non-psychological sense. He is not interested in the sort of conceivability involved when we say that one person can conceive of what another finds inconceivable. So he explains conceivability as follows. A state of affairs is conceivable if no contradiction follows from the assumption that it exists. Of course, we are here coming round full circle from logical consequence to necessity to possibility to conceivability to logical consequence. In an informal explanation, however, such circularity is by no means disastrous, since a circular system of explanations may very possibly succeed in giving the idea of what is to be explained, and in any case, it can at least indicate certain interrelationships among the terms involved. So that is the end of section 3.